Happy Monday, everyone. Here is a weekly outlook at the weather across the US. I'm going to focus a little bit more across the Western US, and really the highlight's going to be a change of conditions for the central and eastern US, much milder conditions, more of the same across the West with expanding areas of concerning winds and heavy precipitation, not just the Pacific Northwest, but expanding southward. I'm going to kind of show at a high, broad level what we're looking at with these four storm systems. And I just want to explain what this map is. So I'm looking at the GFS forecast model from NOAA. And what we're looking at here is surface pressure in the black line. So we have an area of high pressure, for example, across eastern US, areas of low pressure off the Atlantic coast and coming into the Pacific Northwest. Precipitation is denoted by different colors here based on the precipitation type. So green's rain, blue is snow. And what these red, blue, and purple lines are thicknesses between pressure heights, one near the ground and one at mid-levels of the atmosphere. And within troughs, for example, where the air is colder and more dense, you see lower heights. Within ridges, you see the opposite, where temperatures tend to be warmer, you see higher heights. So as an example, you see, downwards of 5,100-meter thicknesses between that 1,500 millibar or hectopascal levels, higher levels then as you go more off towards the south and west. This purple line is the 5,400-meter thickness line, and this is on average a proxy for looking at where that rain to snow line is. But again, there's obviously a lot of complexities of precipitation type depending upon the temperature profile between those layers as well. But for a broad sense, it helps us understand where conditions are cold enough to support snow. Storm System 1 is, kind of across the eastern U.S. Most of the core of this is off the coast now, but we have this area of high pressure across the east central parts of the U.S. Very cold air mass in place. We have some areas of snow, especially lake effect across these regions. As this moves ahead, we're going to see sort of winds turning to the south, bringing much milder temperatures instead of 20 to 40 degrees below average, closer to average or even above average for a lot of the central and eastern U.S. That's Storm System 1. Storm System 2 is now moving into the Pacific Northwest. Again, we're looking at a sequence of storms on top of what we saw last week, more heavy precipitation, more strong winds for parts of the West. As we sort of go through time, we'll see that the second storm system kicks out. And what you'll notice too is this is not digging far south. This is staying pretty north. We're actually seeing a more polar vortex per se. We keep saying the polar vortex is coming to the US. We've just been seeing lobes of the polar vortex. And that's going to go sort of more into a stable pattern. That's going to be more of a zonal pattern. That's going to sort of keep some of the coldest air up to the north out of the U.S. and it's going to keep the storm track, at least initially, further north. So as that goes through, it's going to bring heavy precipitation to the Pacific Northwest. It's going to bring strong winds for portions of the Northwest and Northern Rockies. And as we head into midweek, we see another system coming on shore in the Pacific Northwest. This is sort of Storm System 3, more heavy precipitation. What's different is this one's digging a little bit further south. So areas that have not been seeing a lot of precipitation, not a lot of snow, like Utah and Colorado, this is actually going to bring some snow for those areas, much needed snow for those areas. Wednesday into Thursday, it's also going to bring some risk of high winds for a lot of the Rockies and eastern slopes of the Rockies, Wednesday and into Thursday, and is the backside of that system. Again, this is just one forecast solution. There's a lot to look at, but this is just what this looks like. So there will be some snow behind that later in the week for portions of the Midwest and Northeast, but a lot of that precip is going to come in the form of rain for folks. And then storm system number 4 is coming on shore in the Pacific Northwest Thursday night and into Friday, and we kind of go into more zonal patterns. You'll see that there's more precipitation down into Northern California. So heavy precipitation for areas outside of the Pacific Northwest as we go later into the week. The Weather Prediction Center from NOAA and the National Weather Service is highlighting a few things. Heavy precipitation for coastal areas as we head really today, but through midweek. Areas of heavy snow as well for a lot of the Cascades and into the Tetons and parts of the Rockies as we head into midweek. And then areas of high wind concern as well for a lot of the Rockies and eastern slopes midweek. Now, I want to focus just a little bit, maybe first in kind of the winter storm component, and I'm going to focus more on the Pacific Northwest. So what's going to be different with this series of storms for the Pacific Northwest is there is going to be some colder air to work with, which will have some implications, maybe a slightly lesser flood threat as more of that snow will be sticking in the mountains and not all falling as rain. But there's going to be quite a bit of snow up in a lot of the Cascades, the Northern Rockies. We talk about feet of snow, and this is in combination with very heavy winds. So you'll see some pretty significant impacts for some of the mountain passes over the next few days. That midweek system, again, extending down into Colorado with some impacts for the passes, also bringing some snow for the Dakotas. Now, I want to focus a little bit about the Pacific Northwest here. We're seeing catastrophic flooding, have been seeing catastrophic flooding across a lot of the Washington state area. We can see this if we look at UCSD's CW3E atmospheric river index, and we can see that we had this really significant atmospheric river sort of sequence of events last week. We have another one now just ramping up. I know a lot of folks get really into the details of how strong this is, but I do want to mention, some of these are semantics. What really matters is how much precipitation is going to fall, how much that's going to be rain, how much is that going to fall in saturated soil. So there's a lot more to it than just what the intensity of the atmospheric river is. The direction in which that impinges upon mountain ranges is really important as well, but this looks like a slightly shorter duration, but still pretty intense atmospheric river coming into the area. We're already expecting a lot of rivers to rise once again, some of which, like the Skagit River, are expected to hit major flood stage Tuesday through Thursday. Other rivers will be, moderate, potentially approaching major flood stages. As well as I mentioned, the difference is going to be with a series of storm events is that there will be a little bit more snow instead of rain across some of the higher terrain of the Cascades. Another thing I want to mention, there's a few aspects of these storm sequences that have been impacting the Northwest that haven't been talked about as much. Flooding has been really catastrophic, as I mentioned. There's been some pretty significant wind damage over the last week, too, from parts of Washington through Montana. And we're going to see, unfortunately, more issues with wind and potentially strong winds over the next couple of days. Landslides have also been a really big issue as well. And as the precipitation starts again, we're going to see increased landslide risk for portions of the Cascades where we have this really steep and rugged topography that just tends to be a little bit more unstable when we get this much precipitation. First storm system, or the second storm system across the U.S. that's coming Pacific Northwest, that's going to bring some elevated wind chances really for a lot of Pacific Northwest, mainly tied to the higher terrain areas that are a little bit higher above sea level and on the ridges and peaks of the mountains. It could be some downsloping and localized areas. So that's kind of is today through tonight. You see some of those strong winds really picking up overnight, especially into Montana. As that next storm system moves in later Tuesday and into Wednesday, you sort of see another ramp up of winds. These are surface wind gusts, again, ramping up later Tuesday night and into Wednesday as well. So a couple of rounds of strong wind. As mentioned, as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, this kind of core of really strong mid-level winds will cause some strong winds at the surface for a lot of the central and northern Rockies as well. The other thing I want to talk about is, what do precipitation totals look like? If we look at expected total precipitation. Once again, this again is just one solution, but a lot of models have been showing as we get towards this weekend, you're looking at some areas of the highest terrain seeing upwards of 4 to 8 inches of precipitation. Again, for the higher terrain, more of this is going to fall as snow, especially as we head into later Tuesday and Wednesday behind a strong cold front that brings the snow levels down. So that is good news, is that if we can get more of this precipitation to fall as snow in the higher terrain, that helps mitigate and reduce the amount of runoff into the lower valley rivers into the week. That kind of wrap things up. The one thing I just want to touch upon again as we go later into the week is we see that storm system impacting Utah and Colorado snow midweek. That fourth system I'm talking about as well brings more precipitation in between these systems. It's not really stopping. It's really kind of continuous rain for parts of the Pacific Northwest. But by later week, we have heavy precipitation across Northern California, across Oregon, and that's also going to bring some heavier snow into the Sierra Nevadas and portions of the Intermountain West.